but it's big business. It's billion-dollar business.
Yes, sir.
And it goes back to the truth. It goes back to the information that you and people like Alan and Mock and all of them, they trying to get information to people because it can't be one-sided. One-sided information paints a rosy picture for the pharmaceuticals, for the medical community, for the politicians, for the lawyers, the perverted courts, and the awful education system, as if they were right and true and pure, and they are anything but that.
And speaking of Mock, the Truth Seekers meeting tonight will be at the China Emperor Restaurant. That's at 111 William Cannon here in Austin. And we will be Jake Wade will be our featured speaker if you can make it down there. I'm looking forward to it, Jake.
I'm only hearing every other word you talking about Truth Seekers tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get there. We're going to do, Mock asked me to bring a biblical study, a short biblical study, and I'm going to do 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, with basically a little bit like what we're talking about here, and it has to do with us fighting each other, with us beating up each other, getting into each other's business, doing the rumor mill. You know how badly you and I have been abused by other people talking, and it does affect your reputation. It does affect your credibility eventually, and it does hurt your ability to get this information out, this truth out that we're trying to do. It at the very least, it waters it down and takes away the punch that it ought to have. So, yeah, I think within our own ranks, we need to quit bad-mouthing each other and coming up with, I don't care what you did yesterday or last year. If you're trying to do the right thing today, quit bringing up the past, Quit talk what error was made years ago. It has no relevance today. You can't go back and change it. And as Christians, we're supposed to forgive it. So I'm probably going to do that this evening at Truth Seekers. I'm going to try my best to get there. Right now, I have no transportation. I have no way of getting there. My wife's in another town. The only vehicle we have that's still here and running. So I have a lot of things trying to keep me from going, but I am going to make every effort to get there because I think that's very important.
We'd love to have you there, but if you have a problem with transport, great. Here, did I lose you again? Yes.
Hello.
Well, we've certainly got the demons riled up today. Just
apparently.
Fortunately, I've got more than one computer working. So, but call just dropped. I couldn't even call you today. That was really interesting. Skype's been usually pretty reliable, but now it's not.
Would you try 5 different times?
Yep.
I kept answering, and there wasn't anybody on the other end.
Well,
why don't I get off? And you only got 10 minutes.
No, I've got more time. I've got. I'll keep this going as long as we need to. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, what happened? I don't know what happened to the connection, the previous connection just before this. I could only hear every other word, but now it's a solid connection and I can hear you.
Great. Uh, you know, we're the it's frustrating. I mean, we do. Part of it, a lot of it, I guess, is the programming. I mean, we got the devil sitting in the living room.
Yeah.
I used to tell people when I started the militias, the best thing you can do is take your weapon out, clean it, load it, and shoot the TV.
Amen. You know, I teach many kids, not as many as I'd like, but I teach a lot of kids on CD, doing Skype, in a process that is a better way of doing school, of getting them educated so they can become successful and useful to themselves in life. And it is probably one of the number one things I run into is they're so preoccupied with TV and Game Boys and all of the things coming out. I hear this from the parent. I just heard it at our last Bible study. I heard a mother talking about one of the newest games out is eating her son's time up. And I get this from our San Antonio students. They can do great regurgitation of information from these games and from these media that are really just for young people, because they're socializing on a little box on the internet. They don't know how to sit across the table and talk to somebody. They can't build a relationship because they don't have any experience at it. They haven't practiced it.
I've said that the internet is it's a tool, but they use it to monitor us, to track us. We use it to get information out, and so it's a double-edged sword, you know. Cuts both ways.
I think it's a marvelous tool. It's a great research tool. I've done a lot of my research on the internet, but you have to have a filter because there's so much crap, there's so much junk that comes out on that thing, and it's detrimental to our young people.
That's right. That's right. But they are planning on closing it out.
I've heard that, and I'm not sure they're going to figure something to get around that, because, like you said, it is one of Satan's favorite tools. And you know, I can draw an analogy. It is kind of like our government. If we, who are the remnant, the Christian patriot of the country, the true backbone of the country, if you will, if we used our government like the enemy did, we'd probably have better results. But we want to sit back and badmouth them and complain and that sort of thing, instead of us using the same media, the same tools that the enemy has available to them in a proper way and kind of balancing it out. We kind of turn that over to the other guy.
Now, I tried to find answers back when I was living in New Mexico. I was living out in the middle of nowhere, White Sands Missile Range, and I tried to find answers. And I asked myself, how did they do it 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, crossing this country? How did they do that?
They'd read books.
And I came up with the concept of Liberty Villages, but Liberty Villages basically don't work. because people won't cooperate. We could do Liberty Villages in our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
In our neighborhoods, in a city block, if we just went out and talked to our neighbors, but we don't even know who our neighbors are.
That's right, and that's what I was talking about earlier, is that the reason that concept isn't workable, it's workable, but it won't work, is because of the mindset of the people that really need to be doing it. Depend on each other, make a community, make it a small local community, and get the government out of our back pockets and our shorts, if you will. That's, people complain about it, but here's the solution, and nobody wants to make that transition.
Well, they, anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first, and second, they go after the intelligentsia. Third, they go after the police and law enforcement and soldiers that might still be loyal to the old regime. That's any of us that still honor our oath to defend the Constitution.
Yeah. Afraid that's true. And the thing that's amazing is if you take the Bible totally out of it, if you take patriotism totally out of it, if you just look at history, what you're talking about never has worked, and it's been exampled before us in Russia and in Germany and in Japan and in China and many places. This hasn't worked, and we're embracing it again. Socialism, communism does not work, because even if it was all for one and one for all and everybody sharing equally and all of that, which can't happen, but even if it did, you've always got the predator that's going to take advantage of it and step up and say, now I can control them because they're all trying to be one for all and all for one. And you take away initiative, you take away the militia attitude, and all of a sudden, Big Daddy's running everything.
And we're not going to get this, we're not going to solve this by voting, because the media controls who you vote for.
Yeah.
If they don't tell you Charles Collins is running for president on a Republican ticket, like he did in 1996, and he wanted to shut down the Fed, and this would be the year to do that, by the way, folks, because their charter expires this year. 100 years.
Huh.
And they turned the cameras off. Every cameraman, when he got up to speak at the Republican conventions, every cameraman took a smoke break. Everybody went out and smoked a cigarette. And turned the cameras off.
We can't even get a decent man to run. We've had opportunity to put halfway decent people in there in various places in the government, and you can't get them past the primaries.
That's right. And this is all controlled by the media, which is controlled by the banksters. I mean, we got 200 years of history in Mystery Babylon. I'm working with Timothy Bible College in the political science department. They started every war. They fund both sides because they don't care who dies. They don't care anything about the people.
Yeah.
And so they don't care who wins or loses, because if they fund both sides, they own both sides. And our founding fathers warned us over 200 years ago, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave you your children homeless in the land that we conquered. And we lost a million homes. A million Americans were out of work. Now, supposedly, the figures say the employment rate's going up now, but I don't exactly see that. But
well, that's conditioned economics. It's the media telling us what they want us to hear.
If our churches won't stand up for Christ, if our churches won't stand up, if our pastors won't stand up for Jesus, if they try to, and most of our churches have been infiltrated, taken over by another religion. Now, you know, I get accused of bashing the Jews out there, but Jesus warned them, and I put it on the cover of my book, Mystery Babylon. Beware of the Jews that say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan.
And you can say the same thing about the Christian who claims to be a Christian and is not. You can say the same thing about any of them that claim to be one thing and they're using that for a smoke screen. That includes our politicians that claim to be patriots and are not.
How do we you know, and the Bible talks about this too. They talk about the parable of the tares and the wheat. We can't just go out killing people because they happen to be Jewish or because they happen to be Christian, although they're doing that. And now they're trying to
according to the Bible and according to my experience, they're convertible. If you can get the truth to them and get them to believe it, they will convert. They're not the bad guys. That's the problem. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater because it's not the majority of the people in any of these groups you're talking about. It's what fuels their attitudes and their minds.
Well, as I've said, they don't call television programming for nothing. They program you to think that they create diseases. I mean, God gave us all the materials to heal ourselves. And I was talking about the police state yesterday when my computer was actually working right, and they went after a couple in Indiana who rescued a baby deer, rescued a Bambi. And now they face 60 days in jail and a $2,000 fine for having a deer, an illegal deer. I mean, this is, they're creating crimes. Ayn Rand told us too, 50 years ago, the government has no control over honest citizens, so they have to make criminals out of us. And that's what we're about to face, folks. That's what we're about to face here, because if you went out and bought a gun, and you could have done it years ago. You could have bought a gun years ago and had it registered. They got your name, they got your address, they know who you are, and all they got to do is stroke of a pen, like Clinton said. Stroke of the pen, law of the land. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
If they make...
I'm standing on my porch, Clay, and I'm looking at a green pasture in the middle of winter. And I'm making a point to back what you said, is that everything that we have, if we would use it, is right here. I'm looking at, except for power source, for electricity, I'm looking at almost everything I need from my porch. I planted rye and oats for my livestock. We're not feeding them hay. We're not pouring chemicals into them. I don't put chemicals on the land. And yet I have the best looking livestock anywhere around. They're naturally taken care of the way God, you know, all this stuff worked for man, got a hold of them anyway. we forget that. God designed this thing in such a way that the animals, left to their own devices, are going to find the right stuff unless we pin them up to satisfy their own nutritional needs. And if it requires one eating the other, they do that. And we don't tell them, make a law against one of those lower on the food chain having to have a license before they can eat.
Now you're talking about you planted your rye and stuff like that. And by the way, you did that in the proper way. You don't have to tear up the soil. I mean, how long have we been farming the wrong way? I mean, guy in California, he put out a video. He's got all the crops out there, everything, grows his own food, and he doesn't till the land.
I broadcast what they call broadcasted. I've got a little whirly-gig with a big receptacle on the top of it, and you pour the seed in and just spread it out, and that's it. Because, you know, I got to thinking about it. How did the plants replenish themselves before man came along and started messing the land up? The seed fell off the vine or the limb, hit the ground, and maybe a bird carried it somewhere or something stirred it around, but it grew right there all by itself. All it had to have was God's nutrition in the land and water.
Yep. And we could generate in that city block that I talked about, if you really think about it. And think about this, folks. We know that wind and solar work. But Obama's idea, the government's idea of greening America is to sell the top of the mountain there to a corporation so they can put up windmills that'll kill eagles, big, giant windmills. And then they run that electricity that it generates back down to the power company, so the power company can sell it to you and increase the price to pay for the cost of the. You got another hand in your pocket, and control the dispersion thereof, so you only get what they think you ought to get. That's right. And if God gave us everything we need to generate power. And a lot more. I mean, actually, the most powerful source of energy, you just spoke of it. You just spoke of it. The the wheel, the gyroscope, the UFOs. Right. The UFOs out there flitting around in your skies. We know they're there. They're top secret. They're top secret because the government doesn't want you to know that we could have lunch on the moon and be back in time for dinner.
There's a lot they don't want us to know.
And these now when you talked about UFOs, you called them angels. I wrote a book 45 years ago.
Yep.
I wrote a book about a UFO called Heaven. I called it an Earth ship, and it was commanded by Tetragrammaton Lord, which has quite a bit of more significance than I ever even realized 45 years ago. And his co-pilot was Lucifer, and his crew were called angels. And I may have hit it right on the head. I would get this right sometimes, and I think the thing is that God said He blew some of Himself into each one of us. You have an awareness, and you know, you got that right because it's in you. You know, a lot of that came out correctly because it's already in you. It's a part of who you are. Well, I feel like, you know, I don't believe God stopped talking to us 2,000 years ago.
No, hardly.
You know, and I think God's alive and well on the internet, and there's a lot of evil on the internet. There's a lot of pornography. There's a lot of trolls on the internet. But God...
I think he's got a guy named Eziekiel talking to me.
Yes, sir, you've said that. You've said that. and you know, I when I go back, hold on, let me save this.
I'm going to have a bailout here in a minute. I'm not going to be able to continue for very much longer.
All right. Well, we're almost out of time anyway. I finished this recording here, and I'll look forward to seeing you tonight. If you need a ride, just call me, and we'll figure out some way. Randall could run down there and get you.
All right. I'll let y'all know as soon as I find out.
All right.
God bless you. Have a good day.
God bless you. Take care of yourself. Rest up and be strong tonight.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we got that one, and we got this one. Alright. Alright, guys. Appreciate you listening. Sorry for all the difficulties. Don't know whether it's my problem or someone else. I got 3 computers here. They all went down at the same time.
ABC News. I'm Doug Limerick. Slow, steady growth for the economy. Jobs becoming easier to come by. Almost 160,000 jobs added last month. As for the actual rate, ABC's Aaron Petruski tells us
the unemployment rate in this country is stubborn. It ticked up a bit in January to 7.9%, but statistically it's about where it has been since September. There are still about 12 million Americans who are unemployed. Government layoffs have offset gains in private sector hiring. Retailers, particularly auto parts dealers, electronics outlets, and clothing stores, added more than 30,000 jobs last month.
Construction spending rose in December. That shooting incident at office in Phoenix this week has now claimed a second life. Lawyer badly wounded in the attack died at a hospital. Another man also killed. As for the 70-year-old suspect, found dead in an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Suicide bombing just outside the American Embassy, Ankara, Turkey today. The bomber took another person with him, a Turkish guard. Those bomb-sniffing dogs you see in airports, are many of them a waste of taxpayer money? The Government Accounting Office has videos that show some of the dogs unable to pass explosives detection tests.
They want to do the right thing, but the homework hasn't been done. A lot of money gets spent before they know something works.
Aviation security expert Jeff Price, just one of those TSA sniffer dogs and his handlers cost $164,000 a year. An Alaska Airlines jet flying from L.A. to Seattle. Well into the flight, pilot collapsed, passed out, the co-pilot took over, landed safely in Portland. Reaction to passengers?
It was a little freaky. My wife was not happy, squeezing my hand pretty tight. I was okay. The co-pilot did a great job.
I'm really glad to be on planet Earth and have my feet on the ground.
The NLS Bureau of Labor Management issuing new directives emphasizing compassion and concern for wild horses on federal lands in the West. You're listening to ABC News.